What's happening, y'all? This is Andrew, and this is Mere Music. Today we're going to do a bar breakdown. For those of you who don't know me, I'm an English teacher by trade, so breaking down poetry is kind of one of my favorite things to do. But I don't do it a ton for songs because not very many of them rise to the level that they need to rise to be like really truly broken down as poems alongside songs, right? But this verse right here, the first verse on IAMGAWD's song Heavy is the Head, from his new, I guess it's technically still an album, EP album, whatever. He call it, it's Blood Soaked Suede 2.5, More Suede. The song is called Heavy is the Head, and this verse is nuts, guys. Here, check it out.
Niggas ain't touching what I jot and scribe. Trying to have this rap shit monopolized, throne occupied. Can't tell me that's not the vibe. Stand on business or all bullshit and get knocked aside. Thankful that don't look like the trauma that's locked inside. Listen, I had to look in the mirror and see a version of myself I wasn't proud to be. Heavily guarded, certain shit you ain't allowed to see. It's like an ever-present cloud raining down on me, a shroud draping down on me. Connect with every face that I look in the crowd and see. From where the powers that be devour the cowardly. You knew the journey, you wouldn't be asking how did he. Trying to have a line in my soul stretching for miles to see. I stress ascension is still a perplexing mission. Getting to it, you're keeping your soul righteous for the next dimension. This ain't even my final form, simply an exhibition. They try to contest the vision when they can't digest the wisdom. Every verse is like a spiritual cleansing or exorcism. Corporations invest in prisons, best you invest in living. I pray for a better day, yet I struggle with pessimism. The next edition of one of the greatest to bless the rhythm. Niggas be pressed cause they know he next. Reaching for this level of greatness with the wingspan of a T-Rex. I'm out your orbit, make competitors forfeit assuredly. Gorgeous as orchids, yet of course I be scorching shit horribly. Horrid and morbid, every verse I leave corpses historically. Forged and recorded, they applaud and support it accordingly. I'm sure to be GOAT or more to be dope. Reminiscing back on them days I was too poor to be broke. Still far from paid, pray I make it before I start to fade. Call yourself in love with these bodies, you get your heart filleted. Heavy's the head the crown sits upon. It's the dawn, waking goofies up that's sleeping on me like a Mr. Long.
All right, man. And the second verse by El-Jai, I think is how you say his name. El-Jai. Second verse is amazing of this too. If you have not heard this song, this is from Blood Soaked Suede 2.5, More Suede. This is the second track. The whole song's incredible, but I'd be here for 3 hours doing this bar breakdown if we had to do both. So anyway, here we go. Couple things before we get started. First off, shout out to IAMGAWD for sending me the lyrics. This wouldn't have been possible without that, and this poem is amazing. Second, I'm not a hip-hop expert by any stretch of the imagination. Most of the people watching this video will have forgotten more about hip-hop music this week than I have known in my whole life. I'm just doing this as an appreciation for the skill and the poetic craft here. I want to be clear about that too. First thing I want to get into is that the verse is really long. Right? My understanding, correct me if I'm wrong about this, but my understanding is that a typical verse is 16 bars, yeah? And this one's 32. So it is intentionally, if it's exactly 32, it's intentionally exactly double what a typical, I'm using my quote fingers here, typical verse is. This is 32 bars, it's almost two verses in one. It's in the song, it's about 1.5 minutes long. With the intro, it's about almost 2. There's a reason for that, right? The bars here are talking about two things. They're both talking about both his skill level and how he's not quite to the place financially / with notoriety that he deserves, right? So the first part, skill level, obviously. Even the first line, people ain't touching what I jot, and I'm an scribe trying to have this rap shit monopolized. That's a statement of skill, right? I'm sure to be goated and mortally dope. That is another one. Waking goofies up, that's sleeping on me like a missile alarm. Heavy's the head that the crown sits upon. It's the dawn. Like, again, all of those are statements of skill, right? And the statements of skill are demonstrating the skill as well. But he's also talking about the people who have who are in charge of delivering the money and the fame and the notoriety and whatever haven't caught up with his skill level, right? So his skill level is like off the charts. You can't see where my hand is. This is as high as I can reach. His skill level off the charts, but that fame and notoriety hasn't quite caught up with that, right? Like still far from paid, pray I make it before I start to fade. That's I want this one. Still far from paid, pray I make it before I start to fade. Right. So you have that going on as well. So you have both of those things happening at the same time. So one, he's doubling up in the length of the verse to show his skills, right? He's not just saying I am skillful, but the length of the verse is demonstrating that skill level as well, right? Coop tells us, said on this show and on Hip Hop Talks that doing 16 bars is one of the hardest things to do in music, right? So doing 32 would be hypothetically twice as hard, right? So he's demonstrating that that is possible. So the length of the verse is backing up the claim that he's making that he is that good. But 32 bars also allows the space to show growth, to show momentum, right? The verse accelerates as it goes, like not in the RPMs sense, but in the almost in the amount of rhymes and the way he puts the words together and the speed at which he's using the words in the lines speeds up as he goes. Just looking at the words on the page here, it doesn't look like that. Like visually, it doesn't look like that, but you just heard him spit it a couple minutes ago when I played it for you. So you know what I'm talking about. I'll go into that more in just a minute. But really specifically, it's really hard to keep an audience's attention for a verse like this that there's no hook, right? There's no sing-along piece. There's nothing to grab your attention other than the beat, which is also excellent, and the skill of the MC to be able to pull this off, and he does pull it off. That there has to be some really clever shit going on as well. So we'll start here. The title is a reference to "Heavy is the head that wears the crown," right? I mean, he even says it in this next to last line, right? Heavy is the head who wears the crown, but the actual reverse itself is talking not just about the physical object on your head, but it also is talking about the complex train of thoughts. The internal monologue is what you would call it, like what his mind, and I want to be really careful as a analyst here, as a teacher, because in that when we do literary criticism generally, we have to separate the speaker and the author. So we can't assume that the I in this verse is the same as I am God. And we can't assume that all of this is completely autobiographical. It's not necessarily all factual information about his life or his psyche, right? So we have to talk about it as the speaker, right? As the I in the poem, in the verse, which can be based on a true story. It could be completely true, but we don't know that. So we have to go with what's on the page. There's a conflict here, right? Or there's a, you call it complexity, right? Where there's two things at least going on at the same time. There's the acknowledgement of the speaker's own greatness, and at the same time, the acknowledging the struggles that the speaker is having to manifest that in the trappings of fame, of money, of notoriety, of those things, right? So again, like I said before, the skill level is higher than that at this time. So I want to follow right quick the separate thoughts, right? You have the first three lines. You would call these turns if you're talking about poems, right? I'm not trying to cross that out. I'm just trying to draw a line under that. So the first three lines, that's I'm awesome. Here's an example of my skill level, right? So you have this next piece here that goes down probably to here. That section right here is a discussion of the trauma that the speaker has faced, right? I don't look like the trauma that's locked inside. Listen, I had to look in the mirror and see a version of myself I wasn't proud to be. Heavily guarded, certain shit you ain't allowed to see. So, like, acknowledging that there's another layer to this, right? This is not just somebody who is speaking in a bombastic way like they are in the first three lines, right? This is somebody who there's some complexity to, right? And not, I mean, everybody has complexity, but this is somebody who is willing and able to acknowledge that complexity as well, right? That I know I'm the shit, but also there's a lot of stuff going on underneath the surface that you can't, by you, I mean like the audience is not allowed to see. But even having that acknowledgement there is a cool detail. So then you have right here this piece, the next section right here. This is, you could maybe include this line right here with that part. And it also could be part of that part at the top too, because that's trying to have the line at my show stretching for miles to see. That is both of those things that we talked about before, right? Is saying that I am that good, but it is also saying that the people have not recognized yet that I am that good. Because trying to have the line is like, I want to in the future have that, right? So, which indicates obviously that it's not happened yet, though it should be. Then you have this part right here, the next piece. I stress ascension is still a perplexing mission. Get into it yet, keeping your soul righteous for the next dimension. That's a spiritual component, right? That is a statement of ethics, of morals, of I don't want to just have the crown. I don't want to just be acknowledged as the best, but I want to do it the right way, right? And we know, I mean, without putting too fine a point on it, that there are lots of people in the entertainment business that are not the most moral people in the world, right? They're not the best people. They're not, just because you're famous doesn't make you automatically a good person necessarily, right? So that's a conflict, right? So there's a tension there between I want to be this great entertainer, but I also want to keep my soul righteous for the next dimension, to use his words, right? I want to make sure that I'm living correctly and that I am manifesting and showing the things that I think are important to, not just getting ahead to get ahead, right? And that's why every verse is like a spiritual cleansing or exorcism, right? Then you have this little section here. That's a little bit of the shouting himself out, the next edition of One of the Greatest to Bless the Rhythm, right? But the corporations invest in prison, best you invest in living. I pray for a better day, yet I struggle with pessimism. That is acknowledging that the situation is giving you some context of his situation, right? You have a situation, the corporations investing in prison, like that. Not only I have this internal monologue that's kind of complicated, I struggle with pessimism, to use his words, but also there are these forces outside of me that are working against me, right? So you have both of those things going on within, even really in the same line. So again, that's just a little thought that kind of jumps in. And then the rest of this right here, oh my God, we're going to get into this section right here before much longer, but this right here might be my favorite part of the verse. That is coming back to the original thesis, which is people aren't touching what I jot and scribe, trying to have this rap shit monopolized. That's a thesis statement, right? That's what I'm trying to present to you. He uses the same word at the beginning of both of those sections, which in poetic senses and poetic terminology means he's like coming back around, right? Lots of times poets will repeat a word or phrase to let you know that they are returning to the same motif, right? And that's exactly what he does here. He goes into a little more detail in this section here, that he is out of he is better than all of his other competitors. Again, we'll talk about that more in just a second. And then you have the still far from pay to pray I make it before I start to fade. That's a connection back to trying to have the line at my show stretching for miles to see. Those two, it's interesting because both of the bombastic, the shouting myself out sections are ended with a line like that is saying that I'm not quite there yet. Maybe my skill level is there yet, but the recognition is not there yet. I love the rhyming filleted and fade too. There's a lot more rhymes like they go like that in there, but that just makes me happy. And then heavy's the head that the crown sits upon. It's the dawn when Goofy's up to sleeping on me like a missed alarm. Like, and that's again, it goes back to the beginning as well. And it also does what you do in poetry. You're using the title, right? Heavy's the head, the crown sits upon. Like he's using that as kind of a conclusion, right? So by the end of the verse, we come to the idea that of heavy is the head. Heavy is the head that wears the crown, obviously. It's a reference to that. But the head is heavy because not only of all these thoughts, the ones we just went through, the thoughts that he's going through within the verse, but also there's the implication here that the speaker is supporting the psychological weight of being a king, right? Of being that in lots of senses, being that in being responsible for the people around him, in supporting the people around him, in the sense of being the best, most important, all of those things, right? Is doing all of that, but without all the other trappings that go along with being royal in the sense, right? We have watched enough of the British royal family in the last couple years with Harry and Meghan and all that stuff to know that being a royal, a king, a prince, whatever, is not an easy life, right? It's not a psychologically simple life, right? It requires a lot of public facing things that maybe people aren't desirous of doing, and that kind of thing too. But many people who have that opportunity accept those things as kind of the drawbacks or as kind of the payment for having their house paid for and having people waiting on them and people bringing them food and people you get the trappings of it, right? You get the things that that make it worthwhile, right? So it kind of in some ways maybe balances it out a little bit, but this speaker, heavy is the head, because the speaker is going through all the psychological difficulties of being a king, of being a goat, to use his terminology here. But without all of the financial good stuff that comes along with that as well. So all the responsibility, none of the benefits, really, is what's going on, which makes, I would imagine, the crown even heavier, right? I talked previously, briefly, about the momentum at the end of this verse, and this is going to be about this section right here, which I told you was already told you was my favorite part of the verse. But when I talk about momentum, it gives you the sense of intensity, desire, hunger, which are things that fit with the theme of the thing, which is theme of the verse in the song, which is like, this is difficult, right? I know I'm good, but I'm not getting the recognition for that yet, right? Um, so that would make a person hungry, like metaphorically, right? Desirous, make them want to like reach out and grab the crown that they think is theirs, right? Um, this is how language. I want to talk about this. I love this. This is my favorite kind of stuff to talk about. This is how the language mimics that, right? And this line, and those lines right here, he uses the or rhyme to emphasize this. Now that I've blocked off right there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines. Okay, so let's count. Mount your orbit, make competitors forfeit assuredly. He pronounces assuredly like an or. Gorgeous as orchids, yet of course I be scorching shit horribly, horrid and morbid. Every verse I leave corpses historically, forge it, record it. They applaud and support it accordingly. I miss support too, that's 17. I'm sure to be goat immortally dope, reminiscing back on the days I was too poor to be broke. That's in that 6 lines, that's 19 of those sounds. I'll say that again. And those last 2 lines only have 1 each. So in 4 lines, from the line here, there to this one, with just those 4 lines, 4 bars, he has 17 or sounds. And that one is fucking impressive, but also it shows momentum, it shows hunger. It's like, it's whereas the beginning of the verse is, you get jab, jab, jab. This is like a flurry, right? He's working on a speed bag almost, right? It's those of you who, I assume most of you probably haven't gotten 20 minutes into this video without being huge hip hop fans, but if you're not, this is just, I want you to really, really, truly grasp how difficult this is to do. And to make it make sense and not just be playing with sounds, right? I mean, playing with sounds is, whatever. It's not that hard. But to do it and have it make sense and have it fit in the context of the song, so difficult to do. So it's incredibly, incredibly impressive. I also want to point out right quick before we get out of here, like after those 4 lines, those right here, he changes the O sound. It sounds weird, I know, sorry, but he changes the O sound, right? Because these up here are or the all sound, right? But here he starts using the O, like the long O sound, goat, dope, broke, right? So, but he still weaves in the ors too, poor and immortally. So there are threads like that throughout this verse, and I'd be here for an hour and a half if I like broke them all down. But there are threads, and that's one of the geniuses of this verse, is like how it connects those dots too. And so this verse has the ethos of a man who has struggled, right? The speaker has struggled clearly. Both psychologically, had to see a version of myself I wasn't proud to be, heavily guarded, should you ain't allowed to see, right? That's a person who has struggled in the past, but is on the verge of breaking through. And at this point, we can think of breaking through in a couple ways. We can think of it as a psychological breakthrough, as somebody who doesn't have to deal with these demons as much, right? You have that kind of breakthrough, but you also have the breakthrough into the upper echelon of the entertainment industry, into the hip-hop game, whatever. You can think of it both of those ways. And there's obviously it's surrounded by the metaphor of heavy is the head that wears the crown, right? It's acknowledging that all of this work is difficult, but it's going to be worth it. So those are at least some of the thoughts I have on this verse. It's been a pretty long video already. I appreciate you if you've hung out with me for this long. If you like this, if you enjoyed this, if this was helpful to you, please hit like and subscribe. It's something that I enjoy doing. So if you want to see more of that, let me know in the comments as well. So see y'all next time. Take care, y'all.